We'll start first in Iran, where rights groups say thousands have been killed in a crackdown on nationwide protests that began late December. Those protests that began over the skyrocketing cost of living are now being seen there as the biggest in 3 years. Delano D'Souza has the latest.
Appearing on the U.S. president's favorite network, speaking without the use of a translator, Iran's foreign minister had only Donald Trump in mind. Abbas Araghchi told Fox News that the Islamic Republic had no plans to hang protesters detained in recent anti-government demonstrations.
I can tell you, I'm confident about that, there is no plan for hanging at all.
The denial from Iran's foreign minister comes a day after the head of the country's judiciary said cases would be fast-tracked. During Wednesday's interview, Araghchi failed to address the root causes of the recent unrest and instead pointed to a foreign plot to destabilize Iran. As officials inside the country attempt to show they're back in control, Tehran is keeping the door open for diplomacy with Washington.
Iran proved to be ready for negotiation, for diplomacy. We have proved that in the past 20 years, in 2015, in 2025, every time. But it was the US who always escaped from diplomacy, who cut the diplomacy and opted for war. My message is, between war and diplomacy, diplomacy is a better way.
Donald Trump initially suggested Washington would intervene if Tehran began executing protesters, and the president has been briefed on a variety of responses. However, he has appeared to dial back his rhetoric after receiving assurances from Iran that the killings would stop. It's unclear what Trump's next moves will be after some American personnel were pulled from U.S. bases in Qatar and airlines began avoiding the airspace over Iran.
Well, that comes as the planned execution of the first Iranian arrested during the wave of protests did not take place as scheduled Wednesday. 26-year-old Erfan Soltani was imprisoned outside Tehran after his arrest. Well, we're going to talk a bit more about all of this with Leela Jacinto from our International Affairs desk. Leela, let's talk about the U.S. involvement or non-involvement in Iran. President Trump at first said he was ready to go into Iran if violence continued. Now he seems to be scaling back on that rhetoric a bit more. And speaking to reporters, he also declined to support Reza Pahlavi, who's the U.S.-based son of the former Shah. What can we read into all of this back and forth?
I mean, it's very hard to know what's going on in Donald Trump's head, but it's equally important to try to figure its implications. And you're right. The president was asked about, he calls himself the prince, Prince Reza Pahlavi. And he said, I mean, I quote him here, he says, I don't know how he'd play within his own country. We're not up to that point yet, and we're definitely seeing a scaling back in the rhetoric because the U.S. news reports are talking about senior aides within the Trump administration, led by Vice President J.D. Vance, who have been pushing for diplomacy instead of strikes. Primarily because, the question is, if you're pushing for regime change or inciting Iranians to to change the regime, who takes over, right? And the Crown Prince, Reza Pahlavi's name has been coming up. But we really have no sense of his popularity within the country, okay? He's a very well-known figure in the diaspora. The Iranian community has a huge diaspora, so his voice is amplified on these Farsi language overseas networks, TV networks. And we are hearing slogans on the ground in Iran calling for the return of the Shah's son. But equally, we've had slogans such as no to the supreme leader, no to the Shah. So we have no idea what his popularity is. And what's important is also to look at, who is playing up the voices to bring back the Shah's son. Now, I mean, he spent much of his life in the U.S. And recently he's been in the spotlight. And with every anti-regime crisis that comes up, Reza Pahlavi has been increasing his profile. Over the past few years, he has also gone to foreign capitals and tried to get support from foreign ministries. The most notable that has got a lot of attention is his visit in 2023 to Israel and he's seen to have the backing of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Last year, when there were Israeli strikes on Iran, Reza Pahlavi did not condemn the killing of civilians. He called it an opportunity and denied that civilians were killed. So, within Iran, it's got to be seen, is he considered an import, an outside import, a foreign puppet, like his father? Because Iran is a country that's very difficult to find out what's happening inside, right? Foreign journalists, it's very difficult to report. In every country, you have the centers, what's happening in the metropolitan areas, and it's very difficult to find out what's happening in the peripheral areas. And that is very essential to understand who is amplifying these voices. Does it really represent the totality of Iran's voices? Because in the periphery, you have a lot of ethnic groups, regional groups that are overlooked.
Tell us a bit more about these ethnic groups. Why are they so important to the situation in Iran?
Well, I'll take the latter part of your question first. They're important because they have implications for Iran's domestic stability, which has regional implications. Now, Iran is sort of a powder keg, like you see in many Middle Eastern countries. It's a vast country. It is got multiple ethnic groups, different religious groups, regional affiliations. Broadly, the Iranian population, more than 80 million of them, is the primary ethnic group are the Persians. It's around 60% of the population. Then you have other minority groups. The Azeris are between 15 to 16% of the population. Then you have the Kurds, which is around 10% of the population. And this is in the northwestern part of Iran, near Iraq. You have the Baloch ethnic group. This is in the southeastern part of Iran, near Pakistan. And then you have other ethnic groups, ethno-linguistic Turkic groups, right? Now, among these ethnic groups, the Kurds get a lot of prominence, and they have historically been ferocious opponents of the Islamic regime in Tehran. So, for instance, in 2022, when we had the protests after the killing of Mahsa Amini, the young Iranian women, they started in the Kurdish areas. Mahsa Amini was Kurdish, and the slogan, Women Life Freedom, was a Kurdish slogan. Now, the Kurds have many militant groups. One of the most prominent is the PJAK. It's the Iranian equivalent of the Turkish PKK. So Turkey is obviously not interested in having a violent disintegration of Iran because there's the Kurdish question. These are groups that are armed. The Baloch have their own separatist groups. They keep changing. Right now, the Baloch militant groups have sort of coalescence against the Islamic Authority in Tehran. But we have no idea whether these groups will be cohesive. What is important is there are many young men. They have military, they have a national military, they do their service, as well as there are arms coming across the border. And there is no doubt there have been security officials, Iranian security officials, who have been killed during the recent protests. So if there is a disintegration of this powder keg, it has implications not just for Iran's domestic stability, but for regional players as well.
Leela, thank you for that. France 24's Leela Jacinto. Thank you.